Hello, one and all, and I do hope that the fan is not going to be irritating. I have got it on because it is rather warm here. So, how are we all? Welcome, welcome. I hope everybody can hear me and see me. As you might be noticing, I am not, the image of me is not filling the full screen, and I'm not entirely sure why that's happened. I have set it up the exact same way, so I don't quite know what has happened in this way has in fact happened. Additionally, I'm having some slight issues with getting my slideshow where I need it to be. I think that may be because I'm having some problems with my drive. So I'm just going to quickly see if I can sort that out. While we are waiting, of course, we need to put up an image that was very kindly sent to me by Steve. I haven't got my green screen, so I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to add, there we go. Now then, tell me if you can figure out what I am sat in front of. This was sent to me by Steve, so you're not allowed to guess, Steve. What can we see? Does anybody know what we are looking at here? While we're waiting as well, let's say some hellos. And first in the chat is Steve. And unfortunately, Steve's not feeling very well. So welcome. Thank you for coming, Steve. I'm sorry that you're feeling unwell. I hope you feel better soon. Shane, hello. The family is good. It's been, chaotic. It's this, as I've been saying, the summer holidays have been happening. I've been telling all my friends that these 6 weeks have been the longest year of my life. The children are pushing every one of my buttons and every boundary. But apart from that, we are doing just fine. And hello to Jessie and to Snudpuckle. Hello. Hi, Leona. Oh, thank you very much. For those who didn't see, I was on the Tudors program with Rob Rinzer and Ruth Goodman that was out on Channel 5 earlier in the week. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was great fun to film. I really enjoy working with Rob. In the past, what I have, he's been very supportive and very friendly. Hello, Venomous Care Bear. Thank you so much for joining and happy afternoon. It's evening, very firmly evening for me. Sven, hello, and happy International Day for People of African Descent. Snudpuckle's got where the location. We are indeed in Bath for this one. Can we get more specific? And as Steve points out, yes, he has been on holiday. Indeed, he has. Jessie says it looks huge. It is very large. Hello, Clue. Thank you so much for joining. Catherine, I think fashion, designed for fashion. Venomous Care Bears pointed out Regency. Yes, yes. We're getting very close, and it is a specific name. What I am sat in front of here is the Royal Crescent in Bath. So that's what we have there. Venomous Care Bear asked, "Is this where they film Jane Austen adaptations?" I believe so. Certainly, it's where they want you to think they are if they are potentially in front of some kind of CGI green screen. Yes. Elizabeth, it looks so dry there. Well, if you actually look up the kind of stock images of the Royal Crescent in Bath, you will see that usually all of this area is the most verdant green one has ever seen. It is, and those are the stock images. Steve has taken this because Steve has been there recently, and of course, I'm sure that anybody who knows a Brit knows that we have been banging on about the fact that it's been hotter than Satan's bumhole in the UK, and so that is what our grass looks like everywhere. Our parks look like that. There have been countless stately homes that have essentially uncovered archaeology simply because the grass has got so dry. So yes, this is a recent image. So hopefully there's been some rain this week. Hopefully things will start to look slightly more verdant and lush, and we'll have less risk of having wildfires, which was never a thing we used to have in this country, but we've had so little rain. It's actually been, and it's quite frightening to think about when the rain does fall, whether or not the ground will be able to absorb it or not. So fingers crossed it will be. So before we kick off, I want to say a massive thank you to all of you that are joining me live. And if you're watching on the playback, thank you as well for taking the time. As always, we have some updates. We have a repatriation news that's really more of a decolonization story. We've got some new news. We've got some ding dongs, both people's behavior and also literal willies. And we have got quite a few events and exhibitions. As always, the articles will be listed and numbered in the description boxes, and they will correspond to the numbers that you're going to see on screen at the bottom of slides. Lots of people have been sending me articles, so I've got lots of people to thank. And also I have seen a few coming in yesterday and today. So if we haven't already covered the topic in today's session, then it will make its way into the end of next month's, yes, the end of next month, the September History News Live. So I think without, Venomous points out that they've had catastrophic flooding near them. The country's been going through a 16-year drought. Got all the missing rain once this past month. That's the thing. It's really frightening, because particularly like if the ground is so dry it can't absorb it, the runoff, it just becomes unmanageable. It becomes dangerously unmanageable. Well, I hope Venomous, you are as safe and as comfortable as can be with all of the flooding around you. It's so frightening when nature, I suppose, kicks off like that and just reminds you of its magnificence and the fact that actually, as much as we think we're in control, we are not. Elizabeth, thank you so much for the jewels. It's very kind of you. These are new. These jewels are new. I'm very excited by them. Thank you so much. So without further ado, let us hop in, I think, to the thank yous, etc., etc. And while we are doing so, I know we like to have comments on stage. I'm just going to set that up. We're going to have it, I believe we like it medium big and fairly wide, or tall, or regular. Actually, it looks like we normally have it like that. So I'm going to stick with that. And we're going to start with our thank you. So we're going to thank Jessie, Mr. Dr. Cat. We're going to thank Katie, Steve, Snudpuckle, Elverta, Beth, Katie, Joseph, Jenna, Shane, Maia and Yvonne. Thank you ever so much for taking the time to send me these articles. Now then, let us kick off with our update news. And we are returning to more things that have been found in Pompeii. Archaeologists say they have found traces of a 2,000-year-old love note still etched into the walls of Pompeii. They've used advanced imaging technology to reveal new pieces of graffiti. They have found 79 new pieces of graffiti on a wall in the theatre district of Pompeii. Before now, they have been too unclear for the human eye to make out, so they've used the imaging tech to sort that out. We learned that some 2,000 years ago, a woman named Erato walked the streets of ancient Pompeii's theatre district. When she reached a long passageway covered with graffiti, she decided to carve her own message into the wall. She wrote, "Erato loves," in English. We don't have the end of her message. Presumably it's been chipped off or lost in some way, lost to history, if you will. This love note is one of roughly 300 surviving inscriptions that has been etched into this wall. And so when Vesuvius erupts in 79 CE, the volcanic ash buries all of Pompeii, but it does also give the preservative qualities. And that's one of the reasons why we have so much from that time and from that city, because of the devastation that occurred. The project, they're using it to highlight urban communication, especially coming from sections of the population that don't normally appear in literature or in official inscriptions. They are using RTI images, and they're combining that with metadata and a word that I find really hard to pronounce, but I'm going to try it. Photogrammetry. Photogrammetry? That doesn't sound right, but it's the closest I'm going to get. They have now made, through using this, a new online tool that's going to allow closer examination of inscriptions. The the project is known as Corridor Rumours, and they point out, so the director of the archaeological park in Pompeii says that technology is the key that's shedding light on the ancient world. Only the use of technology can guarantee for the future all of the memory of this life that was lived in Pompeii. So Marianne's given me photogrammetry. There's definitely an O in there. It's definitely photogrammetry. Photogrammetry. It's a very hard word. It's far too many syllables for me. I feel like I'm developing a speech impediment in my middle. Photogrammetry. Yes, good. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Previously known etchings on this wall have included, I'm in a hurry, take care, my Sava, make sure you love me. Another preserves the passions of an enslaved labourer named Mepe, who says that she loves Cresto in her heart, adding, may the Venus of Pompeii be favourable to both of them, and may they always live in harmony. Another newly identified piece of graffiti shows two gladiators, about 4 inches tall each, one holding a sword and shield leaning backwards, and the other is partially visible but seems to be wielding similar imagery. This movement, the twisting of the left gladiator's chest, seems unique and appears to be rather reminiscent of the experience of the spectator at the amphitheatre. So people are documenting the things they're seeing, the lives they're living. There's another image of gladiatorial combat which may depict a woman wearing a helmet and wielding a shield. Now, they do say that there are few female gladiators that are mentioned in ancient documents. And if they're correct, this might be one of the only references to a female gladiator in extant imagery, which would be very, very exciting. This is a 90-foot long passageway that once connected two theatres in Pompeii. So it's a place for chatting, passing through, maybe engaging in some clandestine trysts as you're leaving the theatre. All of the sorts of things that if you've, maybe I'm going to talk about my own misspent youth here, but if you spent time out in wherever your West End is, or your clubbing district, your Soho or some such, there are, of course, these little alleyways and byways that you may find yourself down with a partner that you have accosted for the evening. So all of these things, there's a sort of timelessness to it, I think, that's quite nice to see. And that's one of the things I love about historic graffiti. And there is some, obviously, there's great graffiti in the tower. There's also phenomenal examples of graffiti at places like Dover Castle. You see them in homes as well, people carving and marking their place in the world, a reminder that they were there. And I do find graffiti really interesting. I don't love it when modern graffiti is made, obviously, but I do find old graffiti very interesting. Another update, Buyer Tapestry. I still haven't managed to get tickets. I keep checking when it's going to, the next round are going to launch. I think I've got a little while left to go yet. So this is an update. If you have young ones, there's a new competition that's inviting children to reimagine the missing panel at the end of the Buyer Tapestry. Oh, Steve says that there's some amazing graffiti at Carlisle Castle that's almost sculptured. Yeah, do you know what? There's some stuff at Dover, particularly there's like hearts that are so carved into the walls that they sort of go beyond graffiti, in much the same way that what you see at the tower, in particular at the Salch Tower, but also of course in the Beauchamp Tower, where you have the Dudley crest. That, I agree with you, it kind of goes beyond graffiti and almost into sculptural relief, which I think is really, really interesting. Scarlett pointing out there are church builders carving graffiti into the stones. Yeah, marking the fact that they were there, they were part of building it. I think it's really fascinating. So if you've got young ones, you may want to put them to work on figuring out how the missing panel should look. The Beyond the Battle competition is in partnership with English Heritage and the Foundation Art Explorer. Children ages 7 to 11 are asked to create a final scene that looks beyond the conquest towards a hopeful vision of the future. It's working as a class. They're going to create, design, and stitch an original textile work that pictures a better tomorrow and celebrates the actions and peoples and values that could make that vision a reality. And it's one of the enduring mysteries of the tapestry, being what was the tapestry supposed to show at the end. It is a 230-foot embroidered artwork ending with the death of Harold Godwinson. But the thought many people agree that what was actually supposed to be at the end was William's coronation on Christmas Day 1066, which, as so many things in the Norman world, it did end up in some arson over a miscommunication. Um, they thought that celebration was in fact rebellion. So if your young people are involved in this, do let me know. If any of your young people are winners, then please let me know. I would love to, if possible, shout them out if you have permission to share that. Maybe we'll get an update and I'll be able to share who has won this. And maybe we'll be able to see the winning project soon. Very cool. Next up, staying with Bayer, chest thumping machismo. The Bayer tapestry reveals the bloody, bawdy truth about the Middle Ages. I think this is a really interesting article. If you are preparing to go and see the Bayer exhibition at the British Museum, or if you can't make it, there's some really interesting think pieces that are being done on the Bayer tapestry, and this is one of them, talking about the stories and the narrative that's being pushed in the Bayer tapestry, and in many ways how these kind of conflict documents become a sort of propaganda. And I think it's very interesting. So if you would like more detail, then I recommend having a look at this article. This is less fun. We have learned that 18th century scholars destroyed hundreds of Herculaneum scrolls by trying to prise them open. This is an update to the information that we have about the all the new tech that's being used to get inside of the text, those kind of really burnt up text from the fire, well, from Vesuvius in effect. So in the 1750s, workers who were digging through the volcanic rock at Herculaneum pulled out hundreds of carbonized papyrus rolls. This had once been a private library. So this is Antonio Piaggio and the scholars who followed him. They start trying to get inside of them, some of which they sliced in half, the scrolls, unravel, and then others were coated in mercury vapor or peeled apart with knives, unraveling into fragments or crumbling into black dust. Piaggio created his own unrolling machine and saved some text by teasing the scrolls open a sliver at a time, but it destroyed many others in the process. So, for roughly 2.5 centuries after the scrolls resurfaced in the 1750s, reading them meant risking the physical destruction of the item. Of course, this all changes in June 2026 when we learned the scroll has been read from end to end without being unrolled or cut or touched at all. So it did take some time, and thank goodness it did, because otherwise perhaps we'd go back and start trying to dissect them in ways that would have been incredibly damaging, as we learnt here. And this, I think, is a reminder for me of the fact that the study of history and the way we are studying history. So our 18th century historical ancestors historian ancestors, we're doing historiography now, but our historian ancestors from the 18th century, they weren't stupid. Yeah, they created damage, but I think that maybe in some 100 years, people will look back on what was done to skeletal remains to teeth to extract DNA, maybe even the kind of isotope testing. And I think we might look back on that as being far too invasive, maybe almost akin to what we're seeing here, this kind of shock and disappointment that this was done. And I think similarly, when it comes to choices that were made about preserving paintings. So, for example, now they're taking all of the kind of varnish and lacquers off, but they were put there to preserve. Similarly, choices made about tapestries, choices made about all sorts of building regulations. The more we learn, the more we understand. And I think the practice of history is something that we're still learning about. And for that reason, when we have these interpretations, I always think to myself that we still aren't done, because there's more tech coming out. The science is evolving, and it's evolving rapidly right now. And I think in some things it's going to completely challenge, if not overwrite, our understanding of certain historical events. And that's one of the reasons that's one of the things that I find really, really interesting about it. So here we have the decolonization news. This is not repatriation, but it is decolonization news. So I'm including it here. And this is a reminder and news that a British corporation did continue to traffic in human beings, taking people from Africa to Guyana 40 years after abolition. And we have the proof in a letter written in 1847 to Sandbach Tin and Company's Liverpool office, revealing that it was still engaging in the practice after receiving taxpayer-funded compensation. So when Britain abolished slavery, plantation owners from powerful families, they received what would be called compensation. Those who were enslaved, of course, received nothing. But now evidence come to light that Sandbach Tin and Company, a corporation that was closely linked to merchants who got the biggest taxpayer funded compensation payout, continued to traffic in human beings illegally after the abolition, taking them to Guyana in South America. This is a discovery that's detailed in a book, Searching for My Slave Roots, and that's been written by Malik Al Nasir, who was researching his family histories. And this is part of a research project overwriting underwriting, aiming to uncover the financial networks behind enslavement. And this is launching. It's launched on Sunday. What date? A Sunday in August. So the Slave Trade Act of 1807 abolished the trade in human beings, the trafficking in human beings. In 1833, the Slavery Abolition Act banned slavery itself from the British Empire. So we are 1807, 1833. This letter is written 1847. And this letter by Peter Miller Watson, who's managing the company's interest in Demerara, refers to a ship from the company's own fleet arriving with, and this is a quote, cargo of Negroes, including dozens of young children. The ship we know is called the Parker, was carrying 115 adult males, 86 adult females, 82 under 14 years, and 41 under 4 years. The letter continues, quote, there have been only 3 casualties during the passage, 1 man and 2 children, which Captain R says may be attributed to the wretched state in which they had lived ashore. I don't believe that for a single second. So the author of the text, Malik, said, quote, slavery had been abolished. So how do we know people on the Parker weren't indentured or Africans liberated by the Royal Navy? Firstly, Watson refers to them specifically as cargo and not passengers. When liberated Africans were not regarded as cargo, it was enslaved people that were called cargo. Referring to the, quote, wretched state in which they lived ashore, he's saying they were shipped from land and they were the architects of their own condition. If they had been previously enslaved, blame would have been on their former masters. They would not have been brought if they were sick. When Watson talks about casualties, he's attributing the deaths to as a loss of property, a process of deduction. We can see these people are being illegally trafficked from Africa. Peter Miller Watson, the author of this letter, was a distant cousin of the British Prime Minister, William Gladstone. He was the father of Andrew Watson, who became the first black international footballer when he captained Scotland in the 1880s. Meanwhile, Sandbach Tyne, or Tin, who was wound up in 1975. This was the family business of the Sandbach and Tin families, who, along with their collaborators and relatives in the Gladstone family, dominated the Demerara sugar trade. By the time the letter is written, Sandbach Tin and their subsidiaries had already received compensation equivalent to millions of pounds for the, quote, loss of the people they had enslaved before abolition. The family patriarch, Samuel Sandbach, left the partnership in 1833. His son, William Robertson Sandbach, and his son-in-law, Charles Stewart Parker Jr., were the principal shareholders in 1847. British taxpayers' debt for the compensation payment for these enslavers was only paid off in 2015, so 11 years ago. John Gladstone, the father of William Gladstone, who owned plantations in Guyana, Jamaica, he got the biggest single individual payout, while Sandbach Tin got the second largest on aggregate. Both were among the architects of the compensation scheme. I think none of this will be, sadly, none of this will be shocking or surprising. But it is a prescient and worthwhile reminder. And this is a very important book. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a copy and seeing what else is in there. But that's fascinating. That is our repatriation / decolonization news. I think I haven't seen, there's no repatriations have crossed my desk this month, which doesn't mean they haven't happened. It's just I haven't spotted them. Equally, I do know that lots of sectors, they do kind of close down for August. It's one of the reasons why August is called silly season in the press, because regular scheduled programming does not apply. So it's possible that repatriations either were held back or were not reported on properly. So maybe they'll come up in September and we can talk about them then. Maybe we'll have a huge glut of repatriations to talk about. I do hope so. Now, though, let us hop directly into the new news. And we're going to start, friends, with some fairy tales. And the news that apparently some fairy tales may be 6,000 years old. Now, I think certainly when I think of fairy tales, much like this article, the first place I'm going to think of is the Brothers Grimm. They are, of course, 19th century, and they are incredibly important in the tradition of fairy tales and storytelling. But many of the stories they're telling have passed through an oral tradition that predates them. And there is, as we're seeing now through a new study, some may be as old as 6,000 years. This study, published in the Royal Society Open Science, is a massive online repository of more than 2,000 distinct tales from different Indo-European cultures known as the Arne Thompson Uther Index. It was compiled in 2004. And although not all researchers agree on the specifics, all modern Indo-European cultures, which encompasses much of Europe and of Asia, descended from the Proto-Indo-European people who lived during the Neolithic period in Eastern Europe. Much of the world's modern language is thought to have evolved through them. Tracing these tales back through time is, of course, not easy. There are few historical records. Oral tradition is hard to get a grip of. And if they're oral traditions, which many of them would have been, they leave no written record. So what they've done is they've used statistical methods similar to those employed by biologists to trace species lineages back through the branching tree of evolution that's based on kind of modern DNA sequences. So the theory is fairy tales are transmitted through language, and the shoots and branches of the Indo-European language tree are well defined. So scientists are able to trace the story back up the tree and thus back in time. So if both Slavic languages and Celtic languages have a version of Jack and the Beanstalk, and analysis seems to show that they might, the chances are that this can be traced back to the last common ancestor, and that would be the Proto-Western Indo-Europeans, from whom both lineages split at least 6,800 years ago. This approach mirrors how an evolutionary biologist might conclude that two species came from a common ancestor if their genes both contain the same mutation not found in other animals. Of course, it's never that simple because unlike genes, which are almost exclusively transmitted vertically from parents to offspring, fairy tales can spread out horizontally when cultures intermingle with each other. So the study's authors are focusing on recognizing and removing tales that seem to have spread horizontally. And so when this pruning is done, they have a total of 76 fairy stories, which is massive, to be honest. And tracing these tales, such as the Smith and the Devil, they seem to trace back thousands of years. The authors have done, quote, as good a job as possible with the data they have. In a new dispatch that's been published in Current Biology, that there's a rumination on what allows these stories to stand the test of time. Quote, what really interests me is why these cultural forms exist. Why is it that fairy tales, art, songs and poems, why do these things seem to have had such longevity? The suggestion is that successful fairy tales may persist because they're, quote, minimally counterintuitive narrative. So they all contain some cognitively dissonant elements like fantastic creatures or magic, but they are easy to comprehend. So Beauty and the Beast, you've got a man who's been magically transformed into a beast, a hideous creature, and it's a story about love, romance, and, you know, not judging a book by its cover. I mean, it's also perhaps a story about not necessarily the most appropriate or helpful for allowing young women to make safe relationship choices. The notion that if you just love him hard enough, the beast that wants to rip your throat out will suddenly and miraculously become the most dashing prince of all time is not, if I had daughters, it would not be a message that I would be passing on to them. In the same way, Little Mermaid, you must transform yourself completely, physically, and also silence yourself to get the boy of your dreams. Not ideal in my mind. However, I will say I am using Disney stories to pink pill my son. And one of my proudest moments is that he thinks that the film Aladdin is in fact called Jasmine, because to his mind, she's the star. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I agree with that message. So when people, so we were out today with one of my friends and he asked my son if he'd watched Aladdin. And I went, he doesn't call it that. He calls it Jasmine. And everybody's pretty happy about that. And I think it should be called Jasmine. In fact, I might rename it just in my own head as well. With that being said, the fantasy makes the tale stand out, but the ordinary elements make them easy to understand and to remember. They are, of course, going to be doing some more rigorous testing, and that is the next phase of the research. Venomous Careback, you are right. The Little Mermaid did want to go and explore the surface world before she ever saw Eric. However, to go and see him, she does end up with the Sea Witch, and it does take her voice. There are some challenging elements that I don't think you see quite so much in the newer Disney. I don't think, for example, that messaging isn't there in Moana. It's not there in Toy Story. It's not there in Frozen. And those are the films that my son does enjoy. We have had many an Elsa costume. That my eldest, he does love Elsa, although now he's a Toy Story boy. Toy Story and Cars, he's very keen on both of those, and he particularly likes Jessie from Toy Story, so we do frequently get him yee-hawing at the top of his lungs, which when you're driving can be somewhat distracting, and it also tends to startle his brother, who's like, "Why is he screaming again?" Who can tell? Well, as we get more information as the next phase of this study goes on, I will let you know. The ancient people of southern Sweden and Norway may have used rock carvings to symbolize connections, transactions, and achievements. Around 1800 BCE, they began making footprint shaped petroglyphs called podomorphs on rock outcrops. So this has been, they've examined 627 of these podomorphs, and they found that the petroglyphs range from 3.5 to 12 inches long. Most are slightly smaller than the average adult foot. They do in many cases appear in pairs. Oddly though, the paired ones never seem to match. They're different sizes, two right feet placed side by side, one foot shod and the other bare. They haven't been able to find any real parallels of this outside Scandinavia. So this is something that they're doing differently or in a special way for about 1500 years. It's really interesting. They think that each of them stand in for individual people. A pair of foot carvings might have communicated an affirmation or a bond. Perhaps a podomorph in a pair belonged to a partner in a marriage or a friendship. 2 feet might have been a votive offering. One print carved to make a request to the deity, the other added later to signify the plea's fulfillment. Each footprint might have represented a party transaction between maritime traders. Voyagers might have left paired footprints at different moments of their lives. You go by sea, you make a mark in the rock to connect to home, and when you come back, you put down a mark for the other foot, which I think is really interesting. So, Wheezy Squeezebox says his and hers could be really interesting. It's interesting that some seem to be wearing shoes, some have toes. Really fascinating. We also have a new discovery that's putting women at the centre of early Bronze Age society. Experts have previously believed that bones that were found near Stonehenge belonged to a, quote, stout man. But now DNA analysis has helped to rewrite how they understand that key burial site. And it has shown that the 4,000-year-old skeleton was, in fact, a woman. This now places women, quote, front and centre in the understanding of early Bronze Age society. It's thought this woman was a metal worker and a shaman, someone who was connected to the spiritual world. Lisa Brown, who is the curator at the Wiltshire Museum, where Stout Man has been on display, explains that this shows for the first time that women were also craft workers in this period. She said, quote, "We now have a whole new understanding of this burial, rewriting their story, breaking the stereotypes, and putting women front and centre in our understanding of early Bronze Age society." The director of the museum, David Dawson, said the bones provided, quote, brand new information. For the first time, it tells us women were craftspeople making some of these amazing objects that were buried with people. Things people had to show their status in society at a time when Stonehenge was in full working order. We know that women had a really important place in Bronze Age society. This shows that we were at the forefront of the leading edge of technology as well. When the skeleton was first found by William Cunningham in 1803, Upton, Lovell, Wiltshire thought that this was a stout man due to the largeness of the bones. He recorded what he saw but did not remove the skeleton. It was re-excavated in the year 2000 and removed to save it from a now damaged ancient monument. But it shows that this skeleton had XX DNA. This is one of 1,000 ancient people the Institute is studying as part of a project. They're sequencing the genome from people who lived in Britain over the last 1,000 years. They think this woman did look large and robust. Likely it was a woman over 45 and postmenopausal. The hormonal changes after menopause mean that the female skeleton does not react to the same stresses in the same way as it did previously. So it does end up looking more robust and masculine. They think that she came from a large group of migrants to Britain, known as the Beaker people, due to the pots they made. They were also metal workers. She had arthritis in one of her wrists, which fits with her doing manual labour like metalworking. She was buried with ochre bowls and a touchstone. This suggests that she's working with metal. Ochre powder was used for polishing, while touchstones test for the purity of gold. She was buried with a necklace with decorative bone pieces, including very long ones that were shaped with points, mainly sheep's bones, apart from the two longer ones that were red deer. The bizarre thing about it is that they all come back right from the right leg of the animal. Now they have updated the description of the burial on their website, saying that, quote, 200 years of assumption has now been overturned. The display is going to be changed as well. This metalworker story is now part of a wider exhibition at the Francis Crick Institute called We Go Way Back. Three new Assyrian kings have been identified. This is a statement released by Yale University. Scholars have recently identified three previously unknown and forgotten Assyrian kings. They relying on a preserved document known as the Assyrian King List, or the AKL, which was compiled by ancient scribes over centuries. This is what they have been relying on, but now two researchers from Yale have revealed that it's not as complete as once thought. Quote, no one expected there would be any room for any new or unknown rulers during this time. However, seemingly they have. They've reanalyzed inscriptions and cuneiform tablets. They found three additional monarchs. Asa Erbiltil, who reigned from 913 to 912, so just a year. Tilgith Pileser reigned 763 to 762, so again a year. And Shalmensa 747 to 745, so a couple of years. Perhaps why those short reigns, why they aren't making there. They also ruled during crisis periods of plague, rebellion, and even a ominous solar eclipse. And so potentially that is why their existence was deliberately erased by their successors. If you go to this article, you will see links that you can read the original article and also learn more about the excavations as well. So do check that out. Mary and Rosie would happily drink a coffee called Stout Woman. I mean, fair. Yeah. Excellent. Nice. Our qualification. Stout Woman sounds like the best brand name for a no-nonsense coffee. It does, or indeed for just a stout as well. It could be coffee, but it could also be alcohol. Not that I drink. I think the coffee is a better idea. We should get it branded. Anyone want a coffee? Make some coffee. Trademark that. Stat. Sven, seems like a lot of female remains got mislabeled by early modern people. I think until DNA testing got really good, and it was, and we're able to use so much less material to create a DNA profile. Our testing got so much better. And that's only a fairly recent thing. Without DNA testing, no matter what some individuals with an agenda might want to tell you, the capacity to sex human remains is not all that simple. And we might hear terms about kind of the forehead bossing or jawlines or pubic symphysis, but there are plenty of people who are XY who had a more, in quotes, feminine pubic symphysis or pubic area. Similarly, there are plenty of XX people that will have frontal bossing. So that just sort of goes to show that sex characteristics based upon genetic makeup or chromosomal makeup, they aren't quite as written into the bone as people may want to expect. There are, as we know, very tall women. There are plenty of very tall women in the world. I'm looking at the WNBA. They are very tall women. There are also very short men. And as venomous Care Bear points out, intersex people have always existed, absolutely. So it may well be this person who is buried who has XX chromosomes. We don't know. We don't, even then, we don't know that they lived their life as a woman, that they recognize themselves in that concept. We have no idea of that. Um, T Dust points out that a lot of early folks assumed anyone built with high value grave goods, let alone weapons, had to be male too. They did, but they were also looking at characteristics that are altered traditionally by chromosomes, but the effect of the chromosomes on the human body is not a binary. Sex and gender, as much as people might want to claim it, it is it, what was learned in your GCSE biology was your GCSE biology. And it is so much more complex than that. And it always has been, and it always will be. And Tina points to Native American two-spirit people. This is the thing as well. So for a start, when we look at human remains, and even when we do the chromosomal testing and we come back with someone being XX or XY or maybe XXY or whatever it may be, as I said, we don't know how they viewed themselves, how they believed themselves to be, and how that related to the way they presented to their world and their community. We have no idea of those things. Um, and I do think that's an interesting point to play. And all of these, because this has been happening more and more, that human remains have been, shall we say, re-identified, resexed, if that's a word we want to use. All of this sort of points out that it it isn't quite as simple as just looking at the pelvis, looking at the pubic symphysis, looking at the frontal bossing, looking at the size of the hands, looking at the jobs they're doing, the grave goods they're buried with, because societies operate and respond to sex versus gender in wildly different ways. It's not been a continuum. You know, the men of early modern France, they're all wearing high heels. They were wearing high heels. But high heels are now traditionally seen as being a female or a woman's item of clothing. I mean, not me. I don't wear high heels anymore. I've given up on that. But, whether it's trousers or skirts or long hair or short hair, all of these things, the fashions change as to who gets to wear what. And so I do find it quite fascinating that these shifts are happening. Mysterious shapes hidden beneath the Amazon canopy reveal sprawling ancient civilization much bigger than researchers expected. Jessie asked, didn't most heels start out like cowboy boots, a way to keep feet in the stirrups? A lot of stirrups, so particularly like war stirrups, would have had like almost like a toe bar. I don't know what comes first, whether a slight heel is there to keep your foot in the stirrup, like a riding boot, or actually whether the heel is there to elongate the leg for dancing, whether they're a dancing shoe. And of course, then that explains why men are wearing them, because you're seeing men's legs for the majority of history, whereas women's legs are under their skirts. Um, Scientists have discovered hundreds of monumental geometric earthworks known as geoglyphs in northern Brazil. And these are from the Apiary civilization. They believe now that millions of people may have inhabited the southwestern Amazon rainforest roughly 2,000 years ago, part of an ancient civilization that archaeologists now suspect was much larger than previously thought. This civilization likely peaked between 100 and 300 CE. During that time, scientists estimate that between 1.25 million to 3 million people inhabited more than 70,600 square miles. I'm going to be so for real with you. 70,600 square miles sounds really big, but is it big if 3 million people are inhabiting it? My spatial awareness is abysmal. So I don't know if that's people being really crowded or really spread apart. They use it to estimate the apiary's population size and geographic sprawl. I don't know if that's tight or tightly fitted or bigly. I'm not sure. This does show that the Amazon was not an untouched wilderness, but rather a landscape being shaped by humans for centuries. So this is essentially pulling apart the understanding of how the Amazon used to be. The Acre civilization is thought to have emerged about 600 BCE, with people living in villages of roughly 300 inhabitants on average. In multi-family longhouses, they'd be cultivating crops like squash, maize, and manioc. Apologies. They grew Brazil nut trees and peach palms for fruit. I only found out recently that if you eat too many Brazil nuts, you can get selenium poisoning. There's something in the Brazil nut that if you eat too many of them, it can poison you. It's not going to affect me because I won't eat nuts because I have a nut allergy. But apparently, be careful of the amount of Brazil nuts you eat. The akery built massive geometric earthworks, deep ditches, high outer embankments, and they think that this served as a seldom used public ceremonial political centre. We're told, quote, the idea of pre-Columbian urbanism in southern Amazonia has gained momentum over the past 2 decades. What we know now is that what is going on around the detectable earthworks, such as occupational sites, to support a high estimated population. Scarlett asks, how many Brazil nuts would you have to eat for it to be poisonous? I mean, I think my understanding is that you shouldn't eat like a whole bag to yourself. Like, I think maybe the advice is eat like 2 or 3. You know, don't be eating a pack, right? And I suppose also if you've got like a smaller child, they get to eat less because I'm not that kind of a doctor. But I probably wouldn't recommend eating a bag of Brazil nuts with that in mind. Sven says, I'm guessing high heel chose women is a Victorian thing. No, because we have fashions change as well. So, for example, there are some incredible, almost platform stilts, basically chopins, and there's also patterns as well. But those are designed to keep women and their silk shoes. They're sort of almost an overshoe, and that is about. And some of them can be like a foot tall, and you'd have to essentially have your head on somebody's shoulders to walk around because you're basically on these stilts. But that was about keeping your silk slippers, but also your dress out of the stinking filth of the road if you're walking down the street. So that's serving a particular purpose. There are definitely women are wearing heels in the Baroque period because I've done costume interpretation. And when I tell you a Baroque heel is without a shadow of a doubt one of the most offensively uncomfortable shoes I've ever worn because it's a sort of pointed toe with a buckle and the heel doesn't sit under your heel. So if this is where your heel would be, the heel of the shoe, so you've got the shoe that comes round and the heel's like down here. So it's offset. Or it feels like your feet, like somebody's trampling all over your feet. Bad times. Thank you for the jewels. Very kind of you. Thank you so much. A Roman villa. So, Roman villa bones hint at a 4th century massacre during a political purge in Britain. This is Brading Roman Villa, which is one of the best known Roman sites, excavated in 1880 and 1881. It's famous for its colourful mosaics floors, including scenes of Bacchus and Medusa. They also, though, found scattered human remains. Excavations in the 1990s and 2000 found more human remains inside and outside the villa. Radiocarbon dating was used to learn when these people died, and it's between CE 220 and CE 400. This points to there being one event or several events over a short period in the late Roman era. These dates rule out the idea that the bones came from a much later period after Roman rule had ended in Britain. There is a disturbing story connected to these bones. Several have cut marks made before burial or while the bodies were still fresh. Others have bite marks from animals, including dogs or foxes. It's thought that maybe some victims might have been buried in a shallow grave before scavengers disturbed the remains and scattered the bones across the site. Another clue comes from the villa's connection of about 90 Roman coins. There's an unusual gap between around CE 330 and 348, which isn't present in many other Roman sites around Britain. This might relate to a period of time when the villa was abandoned because of some violent incident that occurred there. Because around the same time, parts of the villa appear to have been reorganised, especially in the Western Range. The scattered remains stand apart from what all archaeologists normally find at Roman villas. Combined with the dating results, the signs of trauma, the animal damage, and the change of the villa's use, they point to an unusual and violent episode. Whether these people died in a massacre tied to some political revenge or any other deadly event, the bones preserve one of the strongest clues you can get about a dark moment in the closing years of Roman Britain. Venomous Care Bear, isn't that when they were pulling out of Britain? Yeah, if this, certainly it's within that window. Yes. So what's happening? Is this political rivalry? Is this somebody taking revenge? Who knows? Who knows? Interesting. T. Dust has got a quote for us. The infamous 4th century political purge in Roman Britain took place between 353 and 354 AD. It was orchestrated by Emperor Constantius II and executed by his chief imperial notary, an investigator named Paulus, who earned the terrifying nickname Catena, the Chain. That's not good, is it? So, I mean, they think this is 330 to 348. So maybe that's when there's a big gap. So it does seem like the gap occurs between 330 and 348 in coinage. So that's perhaps slightly earlier, but clearly some stuff is going on. We're told so T does he dispatched Paulus Catena to Britain with absolute authority to hunt down, arrest, and liquidate the rebels' remaining regional supporters. Liquidate is a choice. Yeah, Scarlet. Double yikes at liquidate. There is something particularly depraved about describing the whole scale mass murder of human beings as something like a liquidation. Something deeply unsettling. We're staying with Rome. 500 amphora have been found off the closest Sicily. This is a 2,100-year-old vessel that's been found, and it's been called, quote, one of the most important underwater archaeological discoveries of recent years. Italy's Carabinieri Cultural Heritage Protection Squad investigated the wreck with the help of divers and underwater cameras. The wreck measures about 21 metres long and 6 metres wide, and it's been described as, quote, one of the most important underwater archaeological discoveries of recent years, offering, quote, precious fragments of our history and providing further evidence of the trade routes and exchanges that made the Mediterranean a, quote, crossroads of civilization. Oh, I sound very muffled, do I? Hang on, let me just check my mic so I've got the right mic on. It should be the right mic. Mate, let me just, if I lift it up, maybe the fan, is that better? It could be that the fan was interfering. Is that sound better? Because I've got a fan at my feet and it may have been hitting the mic. If so, I do apologise. The volume is a bit low. Oh, interesting. I mean, the mic is very close to my face. Okay, hopefully that's going to be a bit better. It may be that the fan is slightly affecting it, but I will melt into a puddle if I don't have the fan. So hopefully we will best now. Okay, I'll keep it up higher. Most of the ship's cargo consisted of Dressel 1A amphora, widely used to transport wine and particularly valuable to archaeologists because they can help reconstruct the commercial networks that linked Italy with other parts of the Mediterranean between the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE. Over the next few months, there's going to be a new phase of scientific documentation and research at the site. They are looking to establish the date of the wreck, its origin, and intended destination, the condition of the surviving material, while also drawing up measures to protect what officials have described as a site of exceptional archaeological significance. So, as and when we get more information about that, I will let you know. A mesh detectorist, we've got another one. Mesh detectors at work discovered tiny tiles in a farmer's field. That's like a tongue twister. A metal detectorist discovered tiny tiles in a farmer's field. Goodness me. She stood upon the balustrade balcony. This is a spectacular ancient Roman mosaic that was buried beneath the surface. A polychrome mosaic, once used to decorate a small room in a lavish villa complex. It is very beautiful. It's roughly 130 square feet and it is in Devon. They think it dates to the 4th century CE. And there are thousands of colourful tiles, each measuring less than half an inch. They form a flower with 8 petals. It's then bordered by a guilloche, have I pronounced that right? Guilloche pattern featuring 2 bands woven together. This is the farthest west that a polychrome mosaic had been found in Roman era Britain. Quote, this and the other trappings of Roman civilization and evidence of affluence that have been found show how much even this far-flung province had been integrated into the Roman Empire. Ah, thank you, Guilloche. Tidas, Guilloche. I hope you can see that picture on screen. I do think it must have been really beautiful. Artifacts have been collected that were visible on the surface, including tesserae and pottery fragments. They then did a geophys survey, which suggested the farmland was once home to a large villa complex. 2019, 2 trenches were excavated and they revealed parts of the mosaic floor. Additional excavations are done in 2021 and they uncovered more of the site. The Colorado crafter is apparently there are different terms for crochet stitches from the UK to North America. Why would that be? That's weird. Unless it's just like the desperation to be different. Who knows? Wouldn't surprise me. The villa was once a modest rectangular structure. However, over time they expanded it. More rooms were added to the north and south ends, filling in the front portion and building an entrance porch. This is a villa sitting within a wider complex with two further possible outbuildings, an enclosure to the south, and possibly an earlier enclosure to the northwest. The mosaic decorated a small space. They think perhaps it was a dining room. Artifacts removed from the site include the mosaic, which will go to the Tiverton Museum of Mid-Devon Life, and it's going to go on display there. They point out, quote, in Devon, we're very much on the edge of the Roman Empire, and Roman villas here are really rare. It's even rarer to have one with a mosaic. This would have been a really high status family home. Jessie said, in the UK, they're biscuits, and in the US, they're cookies. If you try to order a chocolate covered biscuit in the US, the server probably assumes you're high or drunk. Yeah, but here's the thing, we also have cookies, but cookies are just, they're only like the chocolate chip ones, or you might have an oatmeal cookie, whereas a biscuit could be a bourbon or a custard cream or a Garibaldi or the Marks and Spencer's chocolatey roundies, which if you are ever in the UK and you are passing a Marks and Spencer's, it's an incredibly expensive store. But do yourself and everyone you love a favour, and if you're in the UK for a flying visit, pack a suitcase, spare suitcase for just the extremely chocolatey, roundy biscuits, because they are frankly indecent. They are borderline pornographic when it comes to a chocolate biscuit. I have given them as Christmas gifts. I have said to them, when I've given them as Christmas gifts, I've gone, here you go. These are the sluttiest biscuits I've ever tasted. And that is the appropriate way to describe them. They are delectable. It's a thick chocolate. There's biscuit in there, but it's like a whisper. It's the sense of a biscuit. It is all about chocolate, all about it, and it's good chocolate as well. So the other chocolate biscuits are available, but they are a special delight. The Colorado Craft is talking about digestives. We of course have regular digestives, but also chocolate digestives and elite biscuit as well. A chocolate covered hobnob, can't go wrong with a hobnob. It's a good time. I enjoy, they have a Milka roundy. They're foil wrapped. If you know you're on something good when your biscuit is individual foil wrapped. Now then, are we going to call a Jaffa cake a biscuit? Probably not, but it's a good choice. A Tunnock's tea cake has biscuit involved. Is it a biscuit? No, it's a tea cake, but it's delightful. Digestive science that you eat to help with digestion. That's probably how they were sold when they were first made 150 odd years ago or whatever it was. But now they have been dipped in sweet milk chocolate. But you can have them with cheese if you like, the non chocolate ones, because there's chocolate ones and non-chocolate ones. I wouldn't recommend spreading your goat's cheese on a chocolate digestive unless that floats your boat. Do what you want. Colleen, ma'am, I'm hungry, not helping. Me too, actually. I've had my dinner. I had sausage and mash. It was delightful. But now I want a Tunnock's tea cake. I also want some Marks and Spencer's chocolate roundy biscuits. Oh, God damn. They're illegal. Oh, Maltesers. So good. Oh, a dark chocolate digestive. Look, I'm not going to judge you for a dark chocolate digestive, and I know some people love dark chocolate, but for me, dark chocolate feels like a punishment. It feels like I'm being healthy, which just should tell you how terrible my diet is. But for me, dark chocolate is the healthy choice. And what I really, really want is dirty milk chocolate. Give me a Galaxy Ripple or a Cadbury's Whisper or a caramel or a Terry's chocolate orange. Yummy. So good. I know there are people who do prefer dark chocolate. I am not that person because I have the palate of a toddler. Yeah, Terry's chocolate orange. It's one of those things I really enjoy it when because I don't think they are normally in America, and I love it when Americans come over here or they have like an English partner and they're here for Christmas and they get a Terry's chocolate orange and they are well also they don't understand the violence, like the violence that you need to perpetrate on that orange while still in its wrapper to get it to like open up into segments. You need to beat it like your life depends upon it. Beat that orange so that when you open up the metal, the core is available for nibble nibble, but also the orange itself splays majestically. Delicious. Delicious. Next up, look at this, will you? For a second. A Hadrian's Wall keepsake. It is phenomenal. So beautiful. Oh, venomous. Chocolate from Chile. Ooh. I love Lindt chocolate. That is good. I've had Hershey's chocolate once. I'm gonna look. I'm sorry to everybody who eats American chocolate, but why is it like why does it have the texture of sand? Why is that? It doesn't taste like the chocolate we have here. Yeah. So researchers believe that a delicate bronze cup found in central Spain may have been a memento brought home from Britain by a Roman soldier. The cup measures 4.5 inches wide, 3.2 inches tall, and is a 20th of an inch thick. And it's got enamel depictions of a series of fortifications on its base and the name of four forts from Hadrian's Wall along its rim. It is one of a handful of similar cups portraying the wall's forts to have been found in the last few centuries. Through this, this is one is the first to name the forts from the wall's eastern section, though. The style of the cup and the forts listed on it, they think that this vessel was produced in the mid second century AD. One of the forts named on the cup, Condacum, was corregulated in AD 130. Sorry, it's very blurry because I'm trying to look at it and it's not opening up too much. They've also got Vindolanda and Ono. They were destroyed by fire by the end of the second century AD. The fourth fort is called Kilurnum, and they've done isotope analysis of the lead in the cup as well as the enamel used to decorate it, and that suggests it was crafted in northern Britain in the vicinity of the wall. It's thought that the owner was likely part of a Roman military unit, and this is perhaps a kind of souvenir that they took home, with the inclusion of the fort's name making it something that they could take home to show off to their family. Is this an ancient version of those location themed Starbucks mugs? I mean, maybe, maybe. We're talking about Yorkshire puddings in the chat as well. So Scarlett's pointed out that Yorkshire puddings are savoury. Well, yes. However, I know that my husband's mum used to make up the Yorkshire pudding batter, which is, let's be honest, very similar. It can be made sweet very quickly. She used to put bits of apple in to the batter and sort of make up little Yorkshire pudding batter apple turnovers. I don't know. battered apples. And I suppose if you dipped those in sugar, powdered sugar, then you'd have like almost like an apple donut. I mean, the batter that's used is not massively dissimilar to what you could use to make a thick pancake or some such like that. Colleen, it's a great find. I imagine the cup looked amazing today. I agree. It must have been a real sort of what a conversation piece it would have been. Jin is obsessed with Galaxy minstrels. Yes. So I think it's Galaxy that used to make Revels. And for ages I couldn't eat Revels because they included a chocolate covered peanut in their chocolates. But now in the bag of Revels, it's Revels, yeah. They've taken out the peanut. So it's taken away the Russian roulette factor for me. And now I can just eat the chocolate. Now it's like, am I going to get a coffee one and go, ugh? That's the worst case scenario. T does. Visited the forts, got this neat cup. Love it. Yeah, S Drag Nasty, apple popovers. Yeah, that's probably what they were called. Um, Miriam Rosie, some people eat Yorkshire pudding with golden syrup. Yeah, I mean, I suppose traditionally they can be made either sweet or savoury, just like a crepe or a pancake can be. Venomous is also a nut allergy sufferer. It sucks. It really sucks. Next up, so there's you could the things I've sort of busied out is um human remains. Construction in Austria has revealed a Roman era mass grave beneath a soccer field, and new research on the remains found there suggests that enemies targeted each other's, in quotes, sensitive areas. No written records mention a fight in this specific part of Vienna at the time of these men's death, but the brutal nature of their injury, particularly the pelvis area, indicates that these individuals died on the battlefield. This mass grave dates to the late 1st or early 2nd century CE, so it's during the Roman period in this city. And they think they have found the remains of around 150 young men, many of whom died violent deaths. They've looked at the damage inflicted in the men's final moments with arrows, swords, and other weapons. And at least 48 of the skeletons showed signs of physical trauma, with the vast majority of the injuries being sustained at around the time of death. Trauma to the pelvic area was the most common type of injury to be observed by the team looking at it. Sharp force wounds, meanwhile, were concentrated to the skulls of the remains that have been found. There's an individual where a lance head was still in the pelvis when they were excavated. The people who caused these injuries were aiming for the sensitive areas. Eesh. The sheer number and diverse nature of the men's illness rules out the possibility of executions, such as a punishment for military cowardice. Instead, everything points to the catastrophic end of a military operation. The finds they've got, they found iron daggers, scale armor, and a piece of a helmet. Could the men buried in the mass graves be casualties from some kind of a clash? Well, they don't know that, but they think that the individuals might have been Roman military personnel, but they might not all have been Romans. If there's a chance that it's a commingled grave, Romans with another Germanic tribe. Within the context of Roman acts of war, there are no comparable finds of fighters. There are huge battlefields in Germany where weapons are found, but finding the dead, that's unique for the entirety of human history, of Roman history. I think it's interesting that the pelvis would be targeted because obviously, like, there is the identifiable masculinity of what is in that area. But unless you are hitting the femoral with all, like, not trying to be gross, but like unless you're hitting the femoral artery, which I don't know how easy that would be to hit in within the kind of what I know of about Roman armor. Um, if you hit the femoral artery, a person, my understanding is a person bleeds out fairly quickly. However, that's not to say that you're that they wouldn't be able to attack you. If you want somebody to be finished, I mean, you go for the head, you go for the operating system. So I do wonder if this is a kind of later humiliation. Like, is this what is done to people once they're already on the ground? Because I think aiming directly at the groin, it's not, it doesn't have the lethality for me. I don't know. That's just my thought, that it seems like it's deliberate and it's about shaming, I would imagine it, but hopefully we'll get some more information and we may understand more of what's going on. So next up we have got the war in Sudan threatens the ancient Meroe pyramids. That is a UNESCO heritage site. More than 200 of these pyramids are being imperiled by Sudan's escalating war. The site might face a disaster and collapses are possible. It is located about 200 kilometres or 125 miles north of Khartoum. It's home to more than 200 narrow, steep-sided pyramids built between 800 BC and 350 AD as tombs for rulers of the Kingdom of Kush. The wind-blown sand and encroaching vegetation are accelerating the decay of these pyramids. The sand has thickened heavily on the pyramids, and even inside the temples, the grass is growing in thickly. The pyramids have begun to deteriorate, and the stones have started to fall. The accumulated sand is attacking the inherently fragile stones, eroding ancient inscriptions as well. The dispersal of Sudan's archaeological workforce and the halt of foreign missions have contributed significantly to deterioration. UNESCO has warned that more than 100 cultural sites have been damaged and at least 22 museums looted or destroyed since the war began in April 2023. So I've got some pictures here of the things. There are more pictures to go and check out of what might be lost. S. Dragnasty says, "Is this desecration?" And I think in the case of the museums, yes, but from what I'm reading about what's happening with the pyramids, I'm not seeing that as a desecration. I'm seeing that as normal service has not been able to resume, and the general around the clock care, basically, that sites like this require isn't possible in a time of incredibly brutal conflict. You know, what's happening in Sudan and Congo is devastating and terrifying, and isn't making the news sufficiently. So while of course our focus is on the historical artifacts, there is an enormous and just barbaric human cost that's going on here. Repugnant, utterly repugnant. Hi, Ella. Thank you. I'm so glad you managed to catch a live too. Thank you very much for joining in. The next story is one that my husband was so so gleeful about, because for those of you who don't remember, maybe you do, one of my husband's favorite things on earth is a trebuchet, and this is not simply because he's married to me. If you remember when we went to stay over at Warwick Castle so that the children could enjoy the Zog experience, which they did, highly recommend. If you've got young children, the Zog experience is brilliant. However, there are also weekends for not, just with kids, and the hotel at Warwick is a really nice experience. It's really nice to be able to spend a couple of days there because there's loads of stuff to see. And we did watch the trebuchet be fired twice It makes my husband so gleeful. He's even built his own model trebuchet. There was a vicar, I'm not sure, a man of God in a dog collar on TikTok a few years ago who was creating various catapults and then a trebuchet, and my husband was very excited that a trebuchet was being built. So when he saw this news, of course, he was gleeful in the extreme. A shattered skeleton in a Scottish castle is the first confirmed death by trebuchet. This individual was around 20 years old, defending Stirling Castle in Scotland. Skeleton 150, as he's known, was killed by a massive blow that shattered his skeleton in dozens of places before pinning him to the ground. So essentially, he got socked in a rock and the rock went boom. Um, in a presentation at the biannual European. Does biannual mean twice a year or every other year? Both, right? I think this means every other year. I think, but it can also mean both. The University of Bradford bioarchaeologist Joe Buckbury called the skeleton the first confirmed evidence of trebuchet trauma in the archaeological record. Quote, the breaks indicate a very large area of impact and devastation. It's likely that the individual was killed by a siege engine. A forensic osteologist, finds this argument very convincing. Having looked at them themselves, says it seems like a high velocity, high force, high speed impact in a short amount of time. Being hit by something flung by a trebuchet, particularly one of the trebuchet at Warwick Castle, for example, that would be like somebody throwing a car and it landing on you. Unsurvivable. Even today, injuries like that, unsurvivable. Skeleton 150 came to light in 1997 when excavations were going on under Stirling Castle's chapel. They found 9 skeletons dating to the early 1300s. The bones bore injuries of cut marks indicative of violent lives and violent deaths. Skeleton 150, though, stood out. They counted, wait for it, more than 160 separate fractures on the 165 centimetre tall remains, including a skull that was smashed in 61 places. A deep zigzag break to the shoulder and nearly 60 strange zigzagging breaks to the ribs. They said it's very clear the energy is going through the chest. The individual is pinned to the ground quite quickly afterwards. The extensive injuries to the rest of the body, particularly strange breaks on the rib cage and a shattered right leg, ruled out the most obvious possibility, so a head-first fall from the castle's walls. The breaks were eliminated. It couldn't have been trampling by horses or damage the skeleton after burial. Forensic and medical literature was scoured, and they came to the conclusion that he was hit from behind by something travelling at great velocity. They connect it to car crashes and people being hit by a train. But how do you get there from a guy in medieval Scotland? What's large and moving very, very quickly in 1304? Well, a big old rock coming out of a trebuchet. Accounts from the battle don't mention any trebuchet casualties, but the injuries on Skeleton 150 suggest that at least one defender was hit from behind by a flying boulder launched by Warwolf or one of the other siege engines arrayed outside the walls. Quote, it's a huge amount of energy delivered in milliseconds. In skeletons from past times, you rarely see this. I think the only blessed relief of this, frankly, horrendous story is that I imagine, as Venomous says, he didn't see it coming. But also, I would imagine that he would, the second the rock hits, he would have been unconscious. And so I think likely he would have almost been dead before he hit the ground. So he's not trapped under it. So with that level of injury, he's basically squashed flat instantaneously. So hopefully he didn't suffer either. Yeah, T dust. It had to be. It had to have been. It had to. That's a blessed relief. It had to have been a quick death. But my goodness, how horrendous! What a horrendous thing to have happen. And I mean, I just think about the people who were stood alongside it, who saw it happen. Like that must be traumatizing. I mean, and granted, like I think being in a battle zone is. So my husband just said, how's that for timing? The children are asleep, and the first thing I hear you say is trebuchet. I have summoned him. I have summoned him into the video. I just imagine watching that happen to your mate or to your brother, someone you've grown up with. Just horrific. I'll just scroll back up. Oh, Marianne, that's so sad. I'm so sorry about what happened to your nephew. And that's the thing is, people don't take things like, some people don't take rock slides seriously, like when they're driving around. When we went there, when we were down in Dorset for the summer holidays, we went to near Lyme Regis to go fossil hunting, so the kids could find some dinosaur. We got like a little pick and stuff, and we went down, and the kids having a great time. They had goggles on. Far too many people were ignoring the warning signs about not getting too close to the cliff edges. Like that, there can be rock slides. They can come down on you before you even know it's happening. Like, pay attention to the signs. But I'm so sorry about your nephew. How sad. Um, hidden manuscripts reveal medieval reading habits, we learn. 17 fragments of medieval manuscripts have been hidden in plain sight for centuries and found in Guernsey. This offers insight into the island's early literary culture. And it suggests that late medieval Guernsey was home to keen readers who were reading in French and rather than English. They see striking examples of recycling, so fragments are being repurposed as covers for notebooks, bindings, and allowing them to be preserved. This discovery transforms what we can now say about Guernsey's medieval manuscript culture. Although until now there had been virtually no evidence for libraries, collections of books or literary culture on the island during this period, this is, of course, now changing. The discovery has found books of several kinds, scholastic, liturgical, and literary, were available on the island. These fragments were found in the island's archives and His Majesty's Griefer's strong room. They were identified by the archive team working along Aitken and the manuscript expert Dr. David Rundle from the University of Kent. Taken together, these fragments give an unprecedented glimpse into Guernsey's medieval past, which is not only very exciting for the island's archives and institution, but also for these scholars as medievalists. Many of the fragments were in Latin, but six were in French, with most popular works that survive in several copies across England and France. One comes from the dramatic poem The Story of Griselda, a secular play thought to have been written in around 1395. The versions of the Griselda story were popular across late medieval Europe, but the version found in the Guernsey fragment was said to be by the team to be exceptionally rare. The reuse of fragments as book covers is nothing new, we're told. Quote, what was once a practical act of reusing old parchment has, centuries later, preserved pieces of Guernsey's history that otherwise would have been lost. A stone from Henry VIII's long-lost Sandown Castle was reused in Dover Castle, a study has found. I'm going to go on the hunt for that because I'm going to be at Dover this weekend. I'm very excited. So, this was reused during Victorian work at Dover Castle. Dr. Christopher Moore, who is a research fellow at the University of Kent, has traced masonry from Sandown Castle to an 1883 to 84 extension at Constable's Gate. And he reached this finding by comparing old records with features in the surviving buildings. The research was carried out with help from English Heritage as a new chapter to the history of Dover Castle, showing how parts of the Tudor fort survived long after Sandown Castle itself had been lost. This is one of 3 coastal forts known as Castles of the Downs. Henry VIII ordered their construction in 1539 to 40 as part of the defences along the coast. Walmer is another castle from the group, and that still stands today. In the 19th century, coastal erosion has a real damaging effect on Sandown, and the castle is abandoned and then largely demolished. Though an 1883 report, the record of that shows that materials from Sandown Castle were sent to Dover to work on an extension at Constable's Gate. This was built between 1883 and 1884 to provide quarters for the commanding officer at Dover Castle. This adwaits the idea that masonry from the Tudor fort was built into the Victorian structure. This is part of a wider pattern that's been found across East Kent. So stone from Sandown Castle has turned up in other sites, so the Estuary Union Chapel, Walmer Castle, and the second pier abutment at Deal. This also raises broader points about how old buildings changed over time. When a castle falls into disuse, its building materials become a useful resource. If you don't have a notion of kind of a grade 1 listed building, you're going to take bricks and move it where you need it to be. The masonry at Constable's Gate offers a direct link between 2 different periods. Sandown Castle, built under Henry VIII, and the Dover Castle extension happening more than 3 centuries later. The stone, therefore, is part of a story of a fortress that's no longer standing. If you go to Constable's Gate at Dover, you might be looking at masonry first placed at Sandown in the Tudor period. Sandown was lost to the sea and too late demolition, but its building stones followed a different path. And so now we can see that they are scattered in many ways across East Kent. Diana, it would be so cool to be within driving distance of all of these ancient castles. I mean, a lot of people complain about living in London, and it's not perfect. It's a very expensive city to live in. The house that we were able to afford to buy is smaller than miles smaller than what we could have afforded if we lived outside of London. But the immense privilege of knowing that I can take my sons out of my front door and within half an hour they can be at some of the most incredible historical sites is such a thrill. The fact that we can pop into the Tower of London for a morning. I can go and take them to the Golden Hinds. I can show them the Roman Wall. I can take them to the Globe Theatre and to art galleries and to, if we want to go a little bit further afield across London for us, because it's in West London, it's over in the Surrey. If we want to go to Hampton Court, it's very, very possible to go and do those things. And for me, that does make up for it. It is such a thrill. It's such a privilege to live in this sort of distance. And, you know, I can get to Dover Castle in about an hour and 20, traffic dependent. So that's another thing. So the other places that we want to go, it's all commutable. It's all drivable. So new research is suggesting they found out who was writing Elizabeth I's angriest letter. This letter dates to the 10th of February 1586. Elizabeth is writing to Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. In it, she says, quote, "How contemptuously we conceive ourselves to have been used by you. We could never have imagined a man, extraordinarily favoured by us, would have in so contemptible a sort broken our commandment. She demands that Leicester obey her direction, warning him, fail you not, as you will answer the contrary at your uttermost peril." It's They point out that the rage jumps off the page. The only surviving copy of this letter is written in the hand of his secretary, Francis Miles. He is a servant to Elizabeth's principal secretary, Francis Walsingham. So the question then becomes, are Miles and Walsingham involved in writing this apparently personal communication of the Queen's? We have around 3,000 letters of Elizabeth surviving, the overwhelming majority of which were penned by scribe. These are the so-called scribal letters, and they have been, as this article points out, neglected by historians, with those written in Elizabeth's hand being something that are privileged by scholars today. However, if you look at all the letters, and as they have done, you're focusing on identifying the Queen's voice. But in doing this, you're ignoring the fact that they are products of collaboration between Elizabeth and her secretariat. You have to disentangle these collaborations, recovering the contributions of her secretaries, and this is the focus of this author's PhD research. And it was led by Nadine Ackerman, who is a professor of early modern literature at Leiden University. They're trying to figure out how they can find Elizabeth's voice and that of her secretaries. It might be assumed that the more personal elements of her letter, including the expression of emotion, are Elizabeth's herself. That's fairly logical. Daring to communicate or presume to know the Queen's feelings that her prior instruction would have been bold indeed. And early modern secretaries were expected to employ formal and impassive language to exert a tempering influence, moderating emotion to ensure the goodwill of the addressee. But as this scholar digs into the archival material, there's a more complicated reality. Her letters survive in a dizzying array of versions. There are drafts, sent letters, and copies. Through reassembly these different manuscripts, a painstaking handwriting analysis and close textual comparison, there's evidence has been found that the expressive emotion in Elizabeth's letters was in fact carefully crafted by her secretaries. A letter from Elizabeth to the Earl of Shrewsbury, written in May 1584. So the Earl of Shrewsbury is also the husband, potentially at this point, the estranged husband of that famous woman, Beth of Hardwicke. He is, at this time, is the custodian of Mary, Queen of Scots. In the letter, Elizabeth is criticising Mary and her son, James VI of Scotland. Elizabeth writes that Mary, quote, "shall never live to see those days that the crown of England shall depend upon this crown of Scotland." She criticises James, claiming he was, quote, "evil counselled when at the first entry into his government the same was seasoned with blood." Through the draft of the letter, the scholar has discovered that it was substantially edited by Walsingham. His handwriting written revisions, remain on the manuscript. And his edits intensify rather than temper Elizabeth's criticisms of Mary and James. The vocabulary of the revisions bears significant overlap with that in Walsingham's own writing. It's Walsingham's voice, not Elizabeth, that's speaking in the letter, and it's perhaps his emotion that spills out. A letter to Rafe Sadler, one of Mary Stuart's custodians, that would have been intended for Mary's eyes. Again, Elizabeth is criticising Mary. She describes, quote, "the liking we had for a time of Mary's friendship," and raises the potential of a thorough reconciliation. The notion, though, the political expediency of crafting an angry Elizabeth in these letters is potentially Walsingham looking to politic, to show Mary that if she refuses to cooperate, this is going to get her nowhere. In constructing a more nostalgic letter, Elizabeth, in Letter to Sadler, he's convincing her that Mary could regain her favour. Perhaps he's looking to dissuade her from plotting against Elizabeth. It is extraordinary that Walsingham is crafting and potentially intensifying the emotion found in Elizabeth's letter. But it also, in doing so, provides a corrective for the reputation that Elizabeth has as someone who has these emotional outbursts. we have this notion of Elizabeth, who is, on the one hand, this arch pragmatist, equivocator extraordinaire, somebody who is looking to find the middle way in all things, but who also seemingly has these irascible bouts of barely controlled fits of temper, lashing people with her pen and potentially also with her hands. And of course, two things can be true, but I do think it's interesting that perhaps the more rage filled missives we're seeing aren't Elizabeth's voice at all, but seemingly are those of her secretaries. Very interesting. Extremely rare 17th century drawings are astonishingly well performed, preserved. Sorry, this is Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum. They have found this drawing book. The artwork has been attributed to Rembrandt Ulenburg, a celebrated 17th century Dutch painter who has since become fairly obscure. This is a book from the 1600s containing a substantial group of drawings attributed to this artist. There is a 3-month long exhibition of the 17th century book, which was made possible by the Van Eegen family, which has a long history of arts related philanthropy. Oh, Estragnasi said they would love to read that dissertation. I'm just checking. I'm wondering, maybe it's, I mean, I would recommend checking out this website because there are some hot links. And I'm wondering if the PhD thesis either wasn't embargoed or has been published as a monograph, because I can see that there are some hot links in this. So perhaps that's what's going on. Bama Diana, thank you so much for the jewels. I appreciate it greatly. Continuing on here. These are really cool sketches, but the exact purpose of this drawing book is remains uncertain, and they're not sure how it came into the possession of the family that allowed it to go on display. So a lot of questions as to what's going on there. But the images are incredibly detailed and beautiful. And this exhibition is the first time that this book's been on view since 1935. At that point, it was exhibited in Amsterdam's now defunct Museum Fodor. It's hoped that historians can study the illustrations to expand the modern understanding of the artist's life, his techniques, and his workshop. Museum press materials say that the book's significance stems in part from the fact that it has remained entirely intact. So that's cool. Have they found Kent's Excalibur? A 200-year-old sword was found sticking out of a castle lake when hot weather caused water levels to plummet. Fallen branches were cleared from the edge on Thursday, and they found this weapon, which the castle curator said could be a Victorian bandsman's sword from the early 1800s. It's a curved blade that's chipped and rusted, with a gilded, possibly brass hilt featuring a lion on the end. So it potentially dates any point of time from the 1800s onwards. So it could even have been there when troops were stationed there during World War II. It could have been the Stretfield family who originally lived there in the 1800s. So there's plenty of different theories to investigate and try and figure out what's going on. This is all happening because, of course, there is a drought going on. I'll be honest, I would rather we had more rainfall, but the sword is very cool too. We're hopping back to Pompeii. I put this in new news because this is pretty cool. Giant lobsters are taking over the ancient city of Pompeii. So it's a pop art installation. 30 sculptures from the artist Philip Colbert. It's the first contemporary sculpture exhibition to land in Pompeii in 3 decades. So if you're going to Pompeii, you're going to see a bunch of costumed crustaceans. There are these lobster sculptures installed in the remains of the Roman city. And as you can see, you've got one that's in a column here, um, one that's got the Colosseum around its neck, um, one that's got a sword and a shield. There's ancient sea creatures, so they connect to the mosaic, etc. This isn't the first time that these lobsters have been in Italy. In 2022, in Venice, his giant floating lobster installation was placed on a barge in the Giudecca Canal, and it marked the beginning of an effort to release 7,777 actual lobsters back into the wild. And then in 2024, his House of the Lobster exhibition explored the famed Pompeii mosaic with sculptures and installations at the National Archaeological Museum of Naples. And then he did an open air lobster metropolis in Sicily. This exhibition, which opened July 27th, is going to run through to November. If you're going to Pompeii, send pics. It's, I agree with you, Wheezy. It's cool and it's quirky, and you know what? Great photo ops, because you know it's not going to be there forever. You know it's going to place your trip to Pompeii in a very clear, defined moment. Um, so if you're in Pompeii between now and November, do make sure you get a picture of yourself with one of these sculptures, and why not send it over? Maybe I can bang a few of them up in the updates if you're going. Um, this is also fun. An 11-year-old boy in a small Midwestern town is just become the Guinness World Record holder for being the youngest museum curator. He's been collecting specimens for 4 years. As they point out, it's not uncommon for a 9-year-old child, or indeed a 5-year-old child, as my son will make it clear, to love dinosaurs. But it is quite rare for someone to have opened a museum dedicated to fossils and natural history. Come on, we all need a new Mary Anning. Alison Taylor is now 11, and he was recently awarded the Guinness World Record for being the youngest male curator of a museum, the first ever to hold the title. He opened the Cambridge Natural History Museum in Cambridge, Illinois on the 10th of August 2024. He was just 9 years and 340 days old. He'd been thinking about the museum for years. Quote, back when I was around 3 years old, I was watching a show on dinosaurs. I decided I wanted to go and find some fossils, so I went out onto my driveway. And there was a remarkable turn of events where he happened to find a fossil in his yard, and this jump started his passion for paleontology. He spent time collecting more fossils, and then when he was 7, he began planning his museum as a place to store his collection and a space to teach others about the natural world. He got a grant from the city, bestowed after many presentations, which helped provide seed money for his project. Then a GoFundMe allowed Taylor and his family to purchase the building. The plan is to expand if they can. They've got a bunch of fossils, a bunch of minerals, Native American artifacts, taxidermy animals, and some newer stuff too. They've got 13 displays, and they're always getting more. He said it's crazy to learn some of the stories of the artifacts you get. His favourite fossil of the 1,000 or so items in the collection comes down to a tie between an opalized dinosaur bone and a mastodon femur. But a popular favourite among visitors is the Tully monster, or Tully monstrum, a state fossil of Illinois. The museum has 3 of them. Taylor also delivers presentations to local school groups, both at his museum and on the road. That's so cool. Quote, his passion is contagious. His public speaking is just amazing to me. As young as he is and as knowledgeable as he is, he really loves to get up in front of people and share all the different things he's learned. It's like his museum has more it's like his museum has more than the borders of the walls. I love that he's brought this to our small community, a Cambridge local said, who works with Taylor's father. It gives people something to look forward to when it's open. It's something they can bring their kids to and maybe learn a thing or two. So the schedule often changes because of his school and also other responsibilities. So check the Facebook page to make sure it's open, so that you can go and visit it yourself. Jessie said the League of Extraordinary Future Archaeologists. Exactly. The kids are going to be all right, I think. I think the kids are going to be all right. Colorado crafter. I found a fossil on the beach when I was a kid, and it blew my mind. Yeah, I mean, it was really fun. My cousin actually found some fossils for my kids to bring home, and they were very excited by that. And you said it was off the west coast of Canada. My understanding is that it's like quite Canada's good for dinosaurs and fossils. My understanding. Excellent. 31 medieval manuscripts from the Czech National Library are now available online. So I'm sharing this with you. All of the links to where you can go and check them out will be in the article that you will find at number 25 in the description box. But just let's take a moment to appreciate how gorgeous these images are. Look at them. Look at these manuscript images. I have to say I'm particularly taken by the top one, where it's a two-headed bird riding some kind of lizard. Oh, my husband's asked for one to drink. Yes, I do. Please, can you bring it to me? Could you open it first and bring it in? Thank you. You're a scholar and a gentleman. Um, these are brilliant, and they look like they're incredible things to check through. So, um, do head over to the website, and there's loads of links that you can go and check. So hopefully that will be fun for you. Snudpuckle, they are amazing. There's something about illuminated manuscripts, and obviously it is within my period of studying history, but I'm an early modernist by trade, so it's a lot more printed stuff in my time. But there's something about illumination, particularly on vellum. It just feels magical to me. The the knowledge I have about the price, the cost of a single sheet of vellum, first and foremost, but then the material. So these really vibrant, bright colours. So when you're seeing a green on an illuminated medieval manuscript, that's probably malachite. Um, when you're seeing a blue, a very bright blue, it might be woad, but it's more likely that it's lapis lazuli or lazuli. These manuscripts, they represent and speak to the networks of international trading that are going on. Um, and I just think it's really important to remember that. And I think that it's a really great way of showing that as well. Um, Sven asked, how old are the manuscripts and do they come from the Kingdom of Bohemia? So these are 31 medieval manuscripts. They offer a look at medieval medicine, religion, law, and science, and among them is a medical manuscript containing previously unknown copy of advice written for the Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund. So they date from most of them date from the 15th century, but the oldest goes back to the second half of the 12th century. So, oh, T Dust says that I would enjoy the weird medieval guys. How to live, laugh, love, and die. I haven't heard of that. That sounds super fun. That sounds super fun. How cool. Love that. So we have got a stolen Picasso recovered 8 years later in a vacant apartment. This was stolen from a Milwaukee gallery in 2018, and it's been found in a decrepit apartment still in Milwaukee. This is a print of Torero from 1949, and it was discovered during a landlord's walkthrough of an apartment that was recently vacated following an eviction. Hoping to offset the lost rent by flipping the property of the evicted tenant. He combs through the apartment's valuables, and this is what he finds. Oh, you'd feel a bit sweaty, wouldn't you? It's an aquatint on rice paper, and it was certainly hard for the landlord to miss. An art appraiser, Bill DeLinde, was one of two witnesses to the initial 2018 heist. It was a regular work day. He and his business partner noticed the print, which was then valued at $35,000 to $50,000, um, and displayed on consignment, had vanished sometime between 11:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. According to him, it, quote, just walked off the wall. They investigated the theft. They couldn't find any suspects, and they accepted that they weren't going to see it again. DeLynn told the Washington Post, quote, this is a baby. This is a very personal affront when it was taken, and it's now a very personal coming back. A spokesperson for the Milwaukee Police Department told the Post that investigators are determining the rightful owner of the print, which is currently in the possession of insurers. We shall see. A, quote, scallywag schoolboy swiped an abbot's kneecap 70 years ago. This is just proof of how differently we do heritage sites. In the space of 70 years, it was once possible to just clearly grab an abbot's kneecap. His widow has now returned it to Glastonbury Abbey. In 1956, an 11-year-old George Box was on a school trip to Somerset to Glastonbury Abbey. It was in the middle of a large archaeological dig, exhuming the remains of several abbots buried during the 13th century. He was bored, curious, or perhaps mischievous, and he snuck from sight long enough to nab a kneecap from the dig, along with a shard of medieval tile. These things were easy to pick up and push in a pair of schoolboy shorts. I mean, yeah, but surely if you've got human remains, they're not just accessible to the... It was the 50s, and he nearly got away with it too. Abbey staff didn't know the kneecap had been taken until last year, when, at his death, his widow reached out to confess her late husband's transgression. In the years before his death, Box and his wife had agreed that the kneecap should one day be returned to the Abbey. On a summer trip to scatter his ashes in his nearby hometown, she returned the runaway kneecap, to its original resting place. He didn't want it to happen until he'd passed away. I think he was maybe embarrassed. Both things are easy to pick up and put in a pair of schoolboy shorts, if you like. If you like. He's described as a bit of a scallywag, okay. And in preparation for the artifact's return, he made a box for a long journey, reminiscent of the medieval reliquaries that the saints' bones and other items were kept in. The Glastonbury Abbey staff went to work to try and identify the kneecap's owner, and based on what was being excavated at the time, they think it's either Abbot Amesby, Abbot Petherton, or Abbot John of Taunton. All three have since been reburied, and it's hard to determine whether the photos of the remains taken during the excavation were captured before or after the 11-year-old took his souvenir. So the provenance of the kneecap has now become its own interesting piece of Abbey lore. Glastonbury Abbey was built in the 7th century CE, expanded by the 10th, and became England's wealthiest monastery by the turn of the millennium. The abbey is perhaps famous for the purported discovery of King Arthur and Queen Guinevere's remains in 1191. Edward was in attendance at Glastonbury Abbey for the monarch's grand reburial in 1278. But historians have since argued that the discovery of Arthur and Guinevere's remains was fabricated by the abbots in an attempt to draw pilgrims. Skeptics have long decried the stories as inventions by medieval monks to fill the abbey's coffers, especially after a massive fire destroyed the monastery in 1184. Forged or not, news of the finding led to a period of wealth for the abbey. The kneecap and the tilepiece are now on display in the Glastonbury Abbey Museum, and it's on public view for visitors alongside other artefacts excavated at the site. Let's see what we got here. Shipwreck divers have found a 162-year-old bottle of Guinness brewed during the reign of Queen Victoria, and they want to take a swig. Well, of course they do, because what do you do apart from lick the history? Um, if you dive the Mindoro, I will never do that. I genuinely, there are some things that utterly disturb me, and I'm going to be so for real with you. You will never, ever catch me doing the following things. I'm never going skydiving, absolutely not. Bungee jumping, no thank you. I don't want to go in a submarine, no desire. Don't take me under the water in a tin can that I can't escape. I don't want to go scuba diving, particularly not on a shipwreck. Something about, I think they call it submechanophobia. But the thought of something man-made beneath the water, swimming around it, makes me feel unwell. And the other thing that I will never ever do is I will never go, what I think the Americans call it spelunking, we call it potholing. I would rather poop in my hands and clap than go down a pothole. Are you all right? I'm not going to go cave diving or whatever it is. Nutty putty, no thanks. Absolutely not. So maybe though, if there was, I would have to have a drink if I did it, because I don't drink. So maybe that'd be the only way you'd get me down there. This this has been there in the 19th since the 19th century, and they found this sealed bottle, Guinness Extra Stout, London, and this sailing boat sank on the 27th of November 1864. So this particular bottle of Guinness is roughly 162 years old. They recognised they weren't just holding an old artifact, they were holding a flawlessly sealed time capsule of liquid history. So they're going to try and figure out like what particular yeasts are used. Um, they were packed upside down, which under deep sea pressure created a perfect natural hydraulic block, which kept the seawater out. Samples from the bottle have gone to Belgium, so microbiologists are analysing them in his lab. If Guinness gives them the green light, then they might be able to try it. To taste the flavour profile that's been trapped in a vacuum since the Victorian era would be an unforgettable, once in a lifetime experience. They hope that they might be able to sequence the DNA from the beer's yeast and then recreate it. They're calling the initiative Project Jurassic Beer. That's funny. That's funny. So, Guinness was founded in Ireland in 1759. This particular shipment was likely exported to London. The When the vessel collided with the ship, it sank. Nobody had spotted the Guinness until the most recent dive, and perhaps it had been covered um, by sand until recently. Bama Diana asked, "Have I seen the Mary Rose? I heard lifted up from the sea." For I've done more than see the Mary Rose. I have gotten interviews. If there's a video on this channel, I'm very excited about this. I've got a few videos on the channel connected to the Mary Rose. So most recently I went to a 2-day event that was curated by the phenomenal Dr. Estelle Perron on 6 queens, 1 king and his ship, and I vlogged about that. I also got the chance to go down to the Mary Rose and have an interview and a vlog with some of the curators and staff there, including the wonderful Alex, who in fact was one of the divers excavating the Mary Rose when it came up. So she was there, part of the team that helped to raise it from the Solent. So it was I have the Mary Rose is a very particular and special place in my heart, and I hope that in the future I'll be able to do more with the Mary Rose to support it, because as I made clear when I was at the event in the video, it doesn't receive government funding. It's ticket sales and memberships and people going. That is what keeps this incredible item, this, not just the ship, but all of the artifacts found, this time capsule of Tudor life. Well, the only thing that's keeping it in the condition it's in, with constant, because it's so hard to maintain something. Because now they finished the spraying, so now it is about kind of the maintenance of it. Um, so I think it's really important that we fund it, because there's nothing like it in this country. It was spectacular. Um, and yes, I mean, I also want to go and see the Vasa. I really enjoy ships. Um, Not so necessarily so much sailing on them. I like being on ships that are in dock, is what I like. I enjoy a boat. Um, I think I could probably do a canal barge, but it's when it's open water. I also dislike open water. If we were like around a coast, that'd be fine. But I like historical ships. I find them really fascinating. Really fascinating. So yes, I don't know if I'd drink. I mean, I wouldn't drink Guinness anyway because I don't drink alcohol. But I don't know if I'd want to crack open the bottle and drink it myself. I mean, maybe if I still drank and somebody could remake it, clone it, I might taste it then. But I'm not massively keen on doing a big drink of something that's been under the water for the better part of a century of and a half, effectively. Now, I've just spotted that I have blanked out the human remains in one of the images on the next slide, but I've missed the other blanking out. So I'm going to talk about what it is, and I'm not going to show it because I've messed up, to be honest. This is Spain is removing the 11th century kings from a monastery because wildfires are raging. Three kings who ruled the Aragon region in the 11th century, their remains have been threatened by wildfire. They were in the Provincial Museum of Huesca, which is located 50 miles south of the monastery. That's where they've been taken for their protection until conditions improve, and then presumably they're going to go back. Wildfires have been raging for this is August 14th. They've been raging since the Monday before that. And they began moving to the 10th century San Jose de Pena monastery late on Thursday. And so it was concerned that it might be engulfed in flames, has prompted the remains to be moved. So the rescue team has been praised for their bravery. The wildfire had intensified earlier on the Thursday, fueled by higher temperatures and strong winds. It burned more than 9,000 hectares and forced evacuation of 16 towns. The monastery, though, has remained unharmed. There's a much larger wildfire in southern Spain, which has so far burned 31,000 hectares and led to the evacuation of 700 people. So that is the story. It will be slide 29 for us. So if you want to see the full story with the human remains involved, it will be slides 29. But I'm going to just have to skip over it very quickly now. So you may see it on screen, and you'll see that I've half obscured it, but I missed the second image. Not great. Okay, there we go. We're on to ding dongs now, pals. So that was our last new news, the one I had to skip over, and it's now ding dongs. More than 200 golden Mozart statues were stolen from Salzburg a few months after the composer's 270th birthday. As part of a year-long celebration of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's 270th birthday, his hometown did a sprawling public tribute to their beloved composer. 320 miniature golden statues featuring the musician and his favourite pup, as in doggy, Pimperel. With Mozart had a reputation for flair and a distaste for authority, so he probably would have got a chuckle out of what happened next. Within hours of the installation being debuted, at least two statuettes were stolen. Around 80 were nicked over the next several weeks, and by the Wednesday morning, officials announced that 210 out of the 320 statues were missing. Did they not glue them down properly? I mean, I suppose if where there's a will, there's a way. If people would unscrew, a ton of metal, they'll do anything, won't they? Most of the statues, which stand less than 20 inches tall, were made of weather resistant polymers, and they were placed in Mirabelle Gardens, where the musician enjoyed taking his dogs for walks. The so the artist said the worst thing for an artist when his work dissolves. This is organised theft. I find it a bit cheeky. He wants to speculate that thieves likely carried out the heist under cover of night, after all the buildings had closed. The artist is his first-hand experience with such crimes. In 2023, he installed 100 miniature Richard Wagner statues placed in front of Germany's Bayreuth Festival Theatre. Disappeared under mysterious circumstances as well. Each of these Mozart statuettes is worth roughly $100, which puts the value of the loss at around $23,000. The artist had planned to sell the figures after the exhibition, of which the outdoor portion is now closed. Roughly 110 statuettes remain on view, 100 more sitting in reserve. He says that's just the nature of public space. When you work as an artist in public space, you mustn't complain about what's happening there. It ranges from destruction to theft. That is how it is. So, ding dong. Our next ding dong is an actual ding dong. Archaeologists in England, preparing for a road construction, have unearthed a Roman era fingernail cleaner with a handle shaped like a penis. Because that's what I want when I am cleaning the dirt out from underneath my nails, is to be holding a tiny erect phallus. The article says England has such a long, diverse human history that archaeologists never know what they might find once they start digging. Case in point, researchers recently unearthed a Roman era nail cleaner with a handle shaped unmistakably like male genitalia. It's made of copper. The penis topped nail cleaner likely dates to the Roman period. The body of the tool consists of flat, straight, two-pronged blade that would be used to, they think, remove dirt from under the fingernails. The phallic handle has a small loop, which probably allowed the owner to thread it onto a strap or a thin rope for optimal on-the-go utility. Because when I've got my knob-shaped nail cleaner, I want to put it on a string and tie it to my belt. This isn't the first time they've unearthed such an object. They've also found similar in Gloucestershire, Leicestershire, and Lincolnshire, but this might be the finest known example. We might giggle today at the use of the penis tip tool, but it was probably something far more meaningful when it was originally used, because the Romans viewed the phallus as a symbol of good luck, a way to ward off misfortune and bad things in general. Okay. Okay. We know that both the way in which Romans have written about the phallus relative to ritual religion, as well as the symbols they've encountered by archaeologists. There are dozens of penises all over Hadrian's Wall. Yes, it would make a good birthday gift. Or, I mean, we need to bring this back for hen dos, or what do you call them? What do they call them? It's a stag party for stags and hens in the UK, bachelorette party in the US, and we need to bring them back. I mean, we've got penis dealy boppers, we've got penis straws, penis glow in the dark necklaces. I think what better than a cock-shaped manicure kit for the bride to be? Just a series. Nail clippers for the lady, a penis and testicles on your nail clippers. Oh, a nail cleaner. Here's one with a knob on it. Oh, did you want some nail scissors? Well, they will be in the shape of a penis and testicles. This was found near Cheltenham and is part of the quote amazing assemblage of artifacts researchers have unearthed so far. There are many more things that have been found. A copper alloy belt buckle, no sign of a penis on that, I don't think. This is a D-shaped buckle attached to an intricately decorated rectangular plate. There's also historic coins, including a silver piece featuring a horse. They found bronze coins too, and medieval pennies, and a sixpence issued by George VI in 1963. There were modern finds as well, buttons from the Royal Navy during the 18th century, and livery buttons from the 19th century. So there we go. We've got a whole list of accessories here. Something tweezers with a willy on them, ear cleaners. Which end do you hold the willy and dig out your ear? Of course, remember, as all doctors will tell you, nothing smaller than your elbows go in your ear. Although, how you know what smaller, because if you can't fit your elbow in your ear because you don't bend that way, so how do you know? Either way, don't put things in your ears, kids. There we are. Ella thinks we need an Etsy shop. An Etsy shop. My husband suggested that it might be dual purpose, a nail scraper and a dildo. I mean, that would have to, with all due respect, my darling, how big is the filth under your nails that it wouldn't look ridiculous to have a dildo attached to it? uh, your daughter's getting married in October. Alert! Alert the penis makers! Everything must have a willy on it at once. Of course, if anybody has ever spent time with a squaddy, then particularly if you've left something out in front of a squaddy, it may get what they like to call cocked, which involves them drawing a cock and balls on it with a Sharpie. It could even be your own face if you fall asleep in front of them. So there we go. Good times. So yes, and there's another ding dong here. This is not penis related. Well, this is someone being a penis rather than a picture of a penis. Thieves stage a lightning raid on a Bronze Age gold in a Spanish museum. Oh, sorry. Clue. What's a squaddy? It's a soldier, but it's a soldier who's not an officer. So it's like the first rung of soldiering, if that makes sense. So I don't believe they have they haven't achieved, they haven't been promoted into a rank, if you will. It might come from Squadron. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe like a private. Yeah, maybe. Not. I'm not 100% sure on that. Um, I just know they're not officers. That's. I mean, I don't know a lot about the military. I just know that that squaddies. There's squaddies and there's officers. So thieves raided the treasures of Villena. This is one of the greatest Bronze Age gold collections. This is 50 plus, mainly gold objects that were in the Spanish town of Villela, and it lasted just a few minutes. The alarm went off at 5:20 a.m. By 5:24, 4 minutes, the thieves had already left the building. It was very fast, very professional. They've taken most of the treasure. 29 bracelets, 11 bowls, 3 bottles, and other miscellaneous pieces that were kept in a small museum in the Alicante province town. There are also, as well as the gold, pieces of silver, iron, amber, all dating to about 1000 BC. It was discovered in 1963 by the archaeologist Jose Maria Soler in a vessel trunk in a dried out riverbed. The treasure's historical value is incalculable, but the gold alone is worth around 1.7 million euros. That's about 2 million US dollars. So, I mean, the chances of this surviving intact is unlikely. I think this has been probably melted down, I'd imagine. All the security systems were activated, and there'd been no failure by the museum. Shortly before the robbery, another alarm went off in the city sports centre, and police were investigating this was actually a diversion created by the thieves. This, of course, echoes what happened at the Louvre Museum. Of course, that happened in broad daylight, and also 4 works of extraordinary. Oh, my husband's just given the title. It would be the equivalent would be a jarhead. My husband says. So a squaddy is a jarhead in the States, he believes. Apparently, 4 works of extraordinary value by the Renaissance artist Antonella de Messina were stolen from a museum in Sicily. And 2 days earlier, Italian police said they had recovered paintings by Renoir, Cézanne, and Matisse worth over $10.4 million that had been stolen from a museum near Parma. Venomous Care hasn't got to be a Marine. I think no, because you can have squaddies in the army. It's Jarhead is only in the Marines. I think rank wise, if you will. Another ding dong. An Egyptian queen's 673 diamond necklace has been stolen in Vienna in a smash and grab. So police hunt 2 suspects after this 200-carat piece is snatched from an Austrian museum during opening hours. It was on loan to the museum and had once belonged to Egyptian royalty. Pictures of the suspect have been released. The unmasked men bought tickets to the exhibition before shattering the glass of the display case with a hammer during opening hours on Thursday afternoon and making off with a diamond necklace. Officers found out through the city centre, deployed police tracking dogs for the suspects. They think it was a contract job on behalf of a criminal gang. The piece had been snatched from a jewellery exhibition that had been on display since June, featuring more than 300 works by the French designers Van Cleef and Arpels. No one was hurt, but there were several witnesses in the room at the time. A tour plan for the exhibition was cancelled, and the exhibition, which was due to end on the 27th of September, was temporarily closed. This is, of course, again connected to the string of high-profile heists. There seems to be something happening. I'm not saying they're all connected, but maybe one is inspiring the other. Unsure. So there we are. These are the ding-dongs. Jessie, I bet that necklace is already broken down. Well, I mean, looking at it, it is incredibly identifiable. I think that in its current state, it would be too hot to handle. So yeah, I think broken down is the most likely thing. So my husband's given an explanation because he's spent a lot of time working with ex-military people. Most of our fighting forces are in the army, whereas in the US, the Marine Corps has this honour. So squaddy and jarhead are not like for like, unless it involves weighing in a kettle at a house party. Apparently, he was involved in quite a lot of chat about this. So I know who I might be inviting over to my house anytime soon. Yeah, I think you're completely right that it's been broken down. I would be very surprised. Unless it was stolen for hire. Who knows? It could be stolen to order. But it's unwearable unless you're only going to places where other criminals are. Because anybody seeing that, it's so recognized. Anybody seeing that, if you're out and about wearing it and someone takes a photo of you, it's just too hot to handle, I think. So we're going to move on to events and exhibitions. Now, if I have been able to find the accessibility information for the museum, you will notice that has been placed beneath the link to what we're talking about here. If you go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, you can see one of the oldest surviving copies of the Odyssey. So if anybody, of course, the Odyssey is big news right now because of the film. I haven't seen it yet. It does look cool, though. So if you do get a chance to see it, at the Met. Let us know what you think. That's on display in New York. If you're getting a chance to head to the Natural History Museum, opening on the 16th of next month, a new free temporary exhibition is happening. Nature and Us Gallery. So this is going to be opening for the first time in more than 80 years. It was once a working herbarium filled with plant specimens from around the world, but now it's been reimagined to show an eclectic mix of objects, models, and tools that we use to collect and share our knowledge about nature. So, on display are an intriguing selection of modern and ancient specimens, both human made and natural. So, you've got things like a miniature model of the Crystal Palace dinosaurs, a skeleton of a monk seal called Jenny, known as the talking fish, a Bryosian encrusted Star Wars toy, a hand axe that transformed our understanding of when humans first existed on Earth. So that's pretty cool, hey? The V&A has got an exhibition, Freddie Mercury Splendid Things. This is a celebration of the superstar in his 80th anniversary year. So there's 8 looks spanning Freddie's iconic career, from music videos to legendary performances. It's free and it's a trail across the museum. So that's opening on the 24th of October 2026. That looks really cool. And last but by no means least, we're going back over to the States, this time to Washington. And this is the Smithsonian Museum of Asian Art. And it's called From the Louvre, Masterpieces of Islamic Art. It opens September 26th and it's going to run until January 18th next year. For the first time ever, an exceptional selection of these artworks, the Islamic artworks, are crossing the Atlantic to the United States. It's a range of objects, including Syrian Egyptian basin inlaid with silver figure, an enigmatic Andalusian bronze lion, a monumental portrait of a Persian king covered with jewels, masterpieces created between the 7th and the 19th century in a vast geographic area that extends from Spain to India. The technical quality and artistic refinement are stunning. I would love it if anybody gets a chance to go and see this to let me know what you think. Um, I hope it looks beautiful. So let me know what you think of this if you do get a chance to have a look at it. Um, so yes, that is the last of our. Let's go here this way. Hello. That's the last of our history news items. Um, thank you so much for spending this time with me. Thank you for joining me and for all of the chat. I've really enjoyed our conversations, as I always do. And please do keep the news items coming. And I look forward to speaking to you in the next news items that will be at the end of September, by which point everybody in my family, apart from my husband, will have had birthdays and we will have celebrated our wedding anniversary. My husband and I, as of about the middle of September, will have been married for 10 years, although we were together for a number of years before that. So, yes, it's our 10th wedding anniversary coming up, and he somehow is still putting up with me. The man is a saint. He is a scholar and a gentleman. So, I will think of something lovely to get for him. Maybe I'll even tell you what I've managed to find. In the meantime, I'm looking forward to chatting in the premiere chats of the videos that I'm going to be putting out on the Fridays and getting back into the swing of it. Schools restarting, education's restarting at the heritage sites. All of that good stuff is happening. So it's going to be busy, 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 going to hit the ground running. Jessie said, isn't 10 diamond? Diamond can't be 10. No, Diamond Jubilee can't be 10 years. 25? I don't. I mean, he maybe. I wouldn't put it past him. He is a man of many skills and many talents, and possibly may also be a spy. Because that man claims, and he's watching this, I'm going to say it because he knows I'm going to say it. That man claims that he cannot speak languages that I have seen him. I have seen him not only speak, but on occasion answer emails in. So I think that that speaks to a person who can, in fact, um, speak multiple languages. He is a polyglot, my husband, and he picks up languages with a almost savant-like quality. We were in Budapest for I think all of about 5 hours before he had picked up enough Hungarian to be able to order coffee and cake in a cafe. So um Brian Valco says Bond cast is getting started now. Actually, he does have a passing resemblance. One of the people that he has a passing resemblance for is not a Bond, but it is a Bond villain. He does have a passing resemblance for Matthew Amalric. That is one of his doppelgangers. So he he looks more like a Bond villain, um, in the best possible way. Who wants Bond when you can have a bad guy? I think. Is he also suave? He's incredibly suave. It's the suavest man ever. He's so suave. I married him. I trapped that man. Locked him down. I did. God bless him. So yes, tin or aluminium for the 10th wedding anniversary. Tin or aluminium. Maybe I'll get him a selection of knives. He likes to cook. Blades. I'll just buy him blades. um Not that I'm biased. No, I'm not at all biased. I have a praiser's eye for all things. He's a very good man. We shall I'm very happy that we've been married 10 years. Many more to come, I hope. Um did I keep him in my basement in Brighton? Well, I did meet him in Brighton, but it was in a pub, not in a basement. The day we met, he walked into a bar that I was working in. I'll be honest with you, I was a terrible barmaid. Never a good barmaid. I was quite good at moving kegs. Anything that required like heavy lifting, happy to do that. But you were lucky if you ordered more than one kind of beer. You were lucky if you got what you ordered. Because I just was like, well, that's fine. And I do think they probably only kept me around because I was prepared to vault the bar and finish a fight. So they didn't have to always have security. It was a fairly rough pub that I used to work in. And so he came in with his mate from work, and I immediately thought, I'm going to have that one. And I did. He walked through the bar, and I went, I'm having him. And we met in the March, and we were renting a flat together by the August. So it moved incredibly fast at start. And then we were together for the better part of 8 years before he proposed. So very quick, and then slowed it right down. And then we got married. Sven, did I drink him under the table? It wasn't long after I met him that I stopped drinking because I was very aware that he would probably leave me if I kept starting fights in pubs with strange men. Because it's one thing to do that when you're when you're single, but when you have got your boyfriend, he feels he has to finish what you start. And my goodness, I did used to start a lot. I was a problem, so I had to stop drinking for my safety, but also for his quite a lot. I was a problem. But yeah, so there we go. Thank you for all the happy anniversary wishes. And yes, it's both of my children's birthdays and my birthday. So my husband lives with 3 September Virgos. He's so tired. He's so tired. He is an introvert as well. God bless. He lives with 3 September Virgo extroverts. He needs a nap. Am I Timmy? Yes, that's where my son gets it from. That's where my children get it from. I was also at school. I would definitely. My mum got called up at school so many times because I would share information that I'd learned. Um, in England, when I was a kid, there was Section 28 in force, which meant that you weren't allowed to, I think the wording was promote a homosexual lifestyle. Well, of course, I was growing up with a mother who wasn't a bigot. So she had lots of gay friends, and I hung out at their house, and she worked with people who were gay, and I therefore knew them, etc., etc. So I inquired, because I'd asked how babies were made a few years earlier. So bearing in mind at this point I am 4. I knew how babies were made already, because I'd asked my mum and she told me in biological intensity. And so then I asked how her gay friends would have a baby, because I understood about, how a man and a woman made one. And so she explained that they didn't have a baby, but she did explain how they express their physical love. And I thought this was fascinating. So I took it back into school with me. I'm 4. And in the sewing circle, because that's the kind of school I went to, everyone's doing their cross stitch. I told the other 4 and 5-year-olds how homosexual men express their physical love. And that did end up with my mother being called up to school, to which her response was, well, was she wrong? And no, I was not. I was not. I was correct. So I was a Timmy. I was a Timmy. But yes, clear, absolutely. I mean, my grandmother, she was raised by her mother, and my grandmother used to, during the war, just after the, yeah, no, during the war, she used to go dancing with a friend of hers, and she knew that he preferred the company of men, and she used to go to dances with him and act as the person he was courting to keep him safe. So back in the 40s, my grandmother was in her late teens, and she was acting as a beard to keep one of her friends safe. Because why wouldn't you? Yeah. My mum was like yeah, look, I mean, my granddad was giving me information about history that was not age appropriate. And my mother was also doing the same thing. So, like, if I asked a question, I would be given I would be given all of the information as a response. There was never nobody ever mediated it to make it age appropriate in any way. And nobody also told me not to tell other people. So, for example, the big man who does Christmas, hopefully there's no children watching right now, but the big man who's in charge of Christmas, I did tell, around about the same time, I did tell everybody that he wasn't real either. So it's there. I was not. I probably should have been told these things, but then told not to share them in quite the same way as I did, which was, if I knew a thing, by Christ, everyone was going to hear about it. There would be no escape. So yeah, that was what I was. I was Timmy, and now my kid's Timmy. So I don't tell him things in the same rigorous detail, because I know what I was like. But my mother was also like it. When her parents used to take her places, they used to sit her down and go, don't tell them where we keep our money, which was at that time under a board in the wardrobe. Don't tell them where we keep our money, and don't tell them the age difference between your mother and your father. So I come from a generation of certified yappers who don't know boundaries. Don't know boundaries, no clue, at all. So good times all around. Right, we are coming up for 2.75 hours, friends. I've had a lovely time, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next live, but also in the premiere chats, which are going to be happening on Fridays as usual. In the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your Monday slash rest of your week, whatever you're doing. Please do interact with this video in the various ways. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, hype it if you can with lives. I'm not sure. Share it, all of those things. The more you tell YouTube that you like my content, the more of my content they might show you. Also, the more people that might come on down, and we can keep having these incredible chats, because what a brilliant, fun community we have. Sensitive, humorous, like all it, for me, 10 out of 10, pals. We're hitting all the right notes because we're funny where we need to be. We're irreverent and light-hearted where we need to be. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but also the compassion and empathy that is evident in this chat every single month, and also in the premieres. I mean, we don't go for as long, but the compassion and empathy that is so evident, I think, is just amazing, and I feel very, very fortunate. So, Lee France, thank you so much for the jewels as well. It's very, very kind of you. Um, so, with that being said, have a wonderful rest of your week. Do take care of yourself, and I look forward to speaking to you all next time. But for now, I'm going to take my leave of this live and of you all. Bye bye for now.